My name is Rachel Parker, and I am 33 years old. I live in Chicago now, running my own design studio, but before I tell you how I built myself up, I need to take you back to last Christmas. That was the night everything exploded, the night years of bottled up pain came pouring out like fire. Why are you even here, Rachel? My mother's voice cut through the chatter at the dinner table. Her tone wasn't curious. It was sharp, laced with the same venom I had been swallowing for as long as I could remember. My fork froze mid-air, the roast beef growing cold on my plate. You don't even belong at this table, she added, her eyes pinning me down like a knife. You're the most useless child this family has. The room went dead silent. Knives stopped scraping, glasses paused mid-sip. My siblings exchanged glances, uncomfortable but not surprised. It wasn't the first time my mother humiliated me in front of them, but it was the first time she had said it out loud, so directly, so viciously. I felt my heart slam against my chest, my cheeks burning hot with shame and fury. I stood up so fast my chair screeched against the hardwood floor. Don't you dare talk to me like that again, I shouted, my voice shaking but loud enough to rattle the silverware. My brother laughed under his breath, muttering, "Here we go again," while my sister whispered something to her husband and smirked. My father, as always, sat frozen, his eyes darting between us but his lips pressed into silence. He never defended me. He never defended anyone against my mother. She was the storm, and we all had to bow our heads and let her winds destroy whatever they touched. But not this time. I slammed my hands on the table so hard the wineglasses trembled. I have done more for this family than any of you combined, I snapped, looking each of them dead in the eye. I paid for Michael's debts, I bailed Julia out of her mistakes, I bought half the gifts under this tree, and I never asked for anything in return. And you sit here and call me useless? Gasps rippled across the table. Julia's eyes went wide, Michael's face drained of color. My mother narrowed her eyes, her lips curling into a bitter smile. So now you want applause for handouts? That's not success, Rachel. That's desperation. That's you trying to buy a seat at this table because deep down you know you'll never measure up to your siblings. My fists clenched at my sides. That was the moment I realized something. It didn't matter how much I gave, how much I achieved, how many battles I fought on my own. To them, I would always be the disappointment. The outsider. The invisible middle child who never quite fit the mold. But here's the thing, sometimes you need to be pushed into a corner to finally come out swinging. That night, I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. I wasn't going to shrink myself just to keep the peace. And before I continue this story, I want you to pause for a moment. Have you ever been called names by your own family? Have you ever been told you weren't enough, no matter how much you tried? If you've ever felt invisible at your own dinner table, then this story is for you. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a toxic family holiday, hit that like button and subscribe. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happened next. The silence after my outburst stretched thin, everyone waiting for me to sit back down, to apologize, to retreat the way I always had. But I didn't. I stood there, my pulse thundering, my eyes wet but unblinking. My mother leaned back in her chair, smirking like she had won. "Sit down, Rachel," she said coldly. "Stop embarrassing yourself." But for the first time in my life, I didn't obey. Instead, I looked around the table, at the people who had taken from me year after year, who had mocked my career, who had drained my bank account, who had dismissed my success like it was nothing. I thought about the years I spent alone on my birthdays, the college graduation they didn't attend, the magazine cover they never acknowledged. And something inside me snapped into place. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed, I said firmly. I'm the only one here who built a life without leaning on someone else. Michael, you've been drowning in debt for years and still living like a king. Julia, you treat responsibility like it's optional because you know mom and dad will clean up your mess. And Sarah, I turned to my older sister, whose smile faltered. You've spent your whole life being the perfect daughter, but tell me, when was the last time you did anything that wasn't about appearances? The air grew heavy. No one spoke. My father cleared his throat as if to intervene, but my mother shot him a glare that silenced him instantly. That was it. That was the pattern. She controlled everyone, and everyone obeyed. Everyone but me, not anymore. I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, my voice calm now but cutting. You call me useless, Mom? Fine. But this so-called useless child is the reason you're still living in this house, the reason Michael isn't bankrupt, the reason Julia isn't homeless, the reason Sarah's kids get the Christmas gifts they brag about at school. Without me, this family would have crumbled years ago. And maybe it's time I let it. And with that, I walked out of the dining room, my heels clicking against the tile like a countdown. For the first time, I didn't look back. But here's the thing, walking away was just the beginning. Because what happened after that night changed everything. When I stormed out of my parents' dining room that night, my chest was burning, but it wasn't just from the words exchanged. It was from years of swallowing pain, years of being dismissed and overlooked until I almost believed the lie myself. You see, that Christmas fight didn't start at the dinner table. It started decades ago, in the suburbs of Milwaukee, where I grew up as the middle child in a family that never seemed to see me. My brother Ethan was born first. From the moment he could walk, he was treated like a future champion. Tall, athletic, charismatic, he was the star quarterback by high school, the hometown hero everyone adored. Our parents lived for his football games. Every Friday night, the stands would be packed, my mother painted in school colors, my father grinning with pride. They would shout his name so loudly it carried across the field, their voices raw from cheering. Meanwhile, I sat wrapped in a blanket on the cold bleachers, sketching in my notebook under the glow of the stadium lights, unseen, unheard, unnoticed. Then came my older sister, Claire. If Ethan was the golden son, Claire was the perfect daughter. My mother's pride and joy. She played piano, baked pies, joined church groups, and embodied everything my mother valued in a woman: traditional, obedient, and family-centered. By 23, she was married to her high school sweetheart. By 25, she had her first child. My mother never stopped bragging about her. Claire just redecorated the nursery herself, she would gush on the phone. Or, Claire's pot roast could win awards. Every accomplishment was celebrated as proof of her perfection. 7 years later, the youngest, Lily, was born, the baby of the family. And like many youngest children, she was spoiled from the start. If she cried, my parents dropped everything. If she failed, excuses were made. When she dropped out of her first college program, my parents said she was finding herself. When she maxed out her first credit card, they paid it off without hesitation. Lily could do no wrong. And then there was me, Rachel. Caught between the golden boy, the perfect daughter, and the spoiled baby. I was none of those things. I was quiet, creative, a little different. While my siblings were out chasing trophies, weddings, or attention, I was drawing on scrap paper, dreaming of designs and colors. My report cards came home filled with I's and B's, but they were never celebrated. When I won art competitions, my certificates disappeared into drawers, forgotten, while Ethan's trophies covered the living room mantel. Even Lily's finger paintings made it to the fridge. Mine never did. My mother, Diana, ruled our household like a queen. Raised in a strict home herself, she carried those rigid ideas of success into ours. She believed boys should be leaders and providers, girls should be wives and mothers. Anything outside of that was worthless. So when I told her I wanted to study graphic design in college, her face twisted with disdain. Design? That's not a real career, Rachel. That's just drawing pictures. What kind of job are you going to get with that? Even when I landed internships at top firms, she dismissed them. It's not real work like what your father does, she would say. Every achievement was minimized, every milestone turned into an opportunity to remind me I wasn't enough. When I made the dean's list, she asked why I didn't get the scholarship another student had. When I got a promotion, she wondered aloud why it took so long. Her praise, when it came, was laced with poison. Your apartment looks nice, but isn't it lonely living by yourself at your age? My father, Mark, was no better, though in a different way. He wasn't cruel like my mother, but he was weak. A quiet accountant, he lacked the courage to ever stand up to her. When she criticized me, sometimes he would mutter, "Now, Diana," but if she turned her glare on him, he shrank into silence. He showed me small kindnesses when she wasn't looking, a note slipped under my door, a smile when I shared good news, but never enough to balance the scale. The truth hit me hardest during life's biggest moments. When I graduated college with honors, neither of my parents showed up. My mother had a garden club meeting she couldn't miss. My father claimed a work emergency. I sat alone in my cap and gown, watching other families cheer, clapping for strangers because no one was there to clap for me. When I landed my first major client at 26 and was featured in a design magazine, I shared the news at Sunday dinner, my heart racing with pride. My mother glanced at the magazine for less than a minute before changing the subject to Ethan's new job. My accomplishment disappeared before dessert was served. Even family portraits betrayed my place in the hierarchy. In the giant framed photo in our living room, Ethan and Claire stood proudly behind our parents, Lily sat on my mother's lap, and Mink was pushed slightly off to the side, like an afterthought. But here's the cruel irony. Even with all of this, I still wanted their approval. I kept showing up. I kept trying. I kept hoping that someday, if I worked hard enough, gave enough, achieved enough, they would finally see me. And when they needed me, I was there. It started small. A loan for my father's car repairs. A contribution to Lily's tuition. But it grew. When Ethan made reckless financial choices, I quietly paid off his debts. 3 years ago, when he was on the verge of bankruptcy, I bailed him out, $15,000 that he promised to repay but never did. When my mother wanted new kitchen appliances, they magically appeared. When my father needed a suit for a wedding, I bought it, letting him believe it was on sale. I paid for family dinners, birthday parties, holidays. All while letting them take credit for the hospitality. And yet, no matter how much I gave, I was still the invisible one. Still the disappointment. Still the girl who, in my mother's words, had chosen a career of drawing pictures instead of something worthwhile. Over time, that dynamic poisoned everything. My siblings began to expect my help, like I was the family ATM. My mother framed it as obligation, not generosity. "It's the least you can do after all we've done for you," she'd say, ignoring the truth that she had never celebrated me, never supported me, never believed in me. Every family gathering became an exercise in survival. Thanksgiving was the worst. The year before last, my mother mocked me the moment I walked through the door. "Still single, Rachel? Don't you think it's time to settle down? Or are you just going to focus on your little business forever?" She sneered when I told her I was in a serious relationship with Daniel, dismissing him as just another boyfriend. At dinner, when I tried to share exciting news about a national client, she interrupted me to ask Claire about her kids. Later, as we washed dishes, she said, "It's probably for the best you stick to your little design projects. You're not cut out for motherhood anyway." I left that night with a pounding headache, telling myself I'd skip Christmas. But when December came, guilt pulled me back in. That's the thing about toxic families, they train you to ignore your own pain. To believe that showing up, no matter how badly they treat you, is your duty. By the time I reached my early 30s, I had built a life I was proud of. I had launched my own studio, Rachel Parker Design, and turned it into a thriving business with employees, national clients, and industry recognition. I had bought my condo outright. I had savings, investments, stability. I was in a committed relationship with Daniel, a kind architect who saw my worth even when I didn't. I had friends who celebrated me like family never did. And yet, around my real family, I shrank back into that invisible middle child, desperate for approval that would never come. Until that Christmas. Because when my mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "You are the most useless child we have," something inside me finally broke. Or maybe it didn't break, it woke up. That fight at the dinner table was years in the making. But what came after was something none of them saw coming. When I slammed the door of my parents' house behind me that Christmas night, snowflakes stuck to my lashes, and the cold air hit me like a slap. My hands were shaking, but not from the winter chill. I was vibrating with rage, humiliation, and something else, clarity. For the first time in 33 years, I saw my family for who they really were. I stood in the driveway, staring at the glowing windows where my siblings still sat around the table, no doubt resuming their laughter after my exit. My chest tightened, the old ache rising again, the ache of being invisible, of being dismissed, of being told I was nothing. But as I stood there, breath fogging the night air, a thought struck me. They had never seen me. But maybe that was my power. Because if I was invisible, then I was free. And freedom meant I could finally choose how this story ended. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg Daniel for comfort. I didn't call my friends to vent. Instead, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began writing. A list. The first line read, "What I've given them." I wrote every dollar, every favor, every sacrifice. My brother's debts, $15,000. My sister's emergency loan, $7,500. My father's car repair, $2,000. The countless gifts, dinners, appliances, vacations, well over $40,000 across the years. And that wasn't even counting the emotional currency, the times I babysat Claire's kids so she could have me time, the nights I stayed up late helping Ethan with resumes, the weekends I drove Lily to appointments because she was too tired. By the time I finished, 2 pages were filled with proof of how much I had given. Proof that I had been more than enough, more generous, more reliable, more loyal than any of them had ever deserved. The second list was harder. What they've given me. I stared at the blinking cursor, trying to think of something. Anything. After half an hour, I had written 3 words. Criticism. Neglect. Shame. That was all. I closed the laptop with a snap. My throat burned, but this time it wasn't grief. It was anger sharpened into resolve. For years, I had played the role they wrote for me, the invisible daughter, the disappointment, the scapegoat. But roles can be rewritten. And I, Rachel Parker, a designer, a storyteller, a woman who built beauty from nothing, was more than capable of rewriting my own. The decision came to me quietly, like the steady falling snow outside my window. I wasn't going to scream anymore. I wasn't going to beg, or fight, or prove myself to them again. No. I was going to show them. The next morning, Daniel noticed the change in me. "You didn't sleep, did you?" he asked, pouring coffee into my favorite blue mug. "No," I admitted, taking a sip. "But I don't feel tired. I feel awake." His brow furrowed. "Rachel, what happened last night? It broke my heart." I wanted to go back in there and say something. I cut him off gently, placing my hand over his. "Don't. This isn't your fight. It's mine. And I've already decided." "Decided what?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm done being their punching bag. I'm done funding their lives, feeding their egos, and getting scraps in return. I'm going to set boundaries. Real ones." And when they realize what that means, I paused, letting the weight of it settle. "They're going to regret everything." Daniel studied me, a slow smile forming on his lips. "I've been waiting years to hear you say that." In the days that followed, I began to plan. Not revenge, because revenge meant stooping to their level. No, this was strategy. A reclamation of power. Step 1: cut the financial lifeline. I called my bank and froze any automatic transfers I had set up for my siblings. I drafted emails politely but firmly reminding Ethan and Claire that I expected repayment for the loans I had given them. I knew they'd never pay me back, but this wasn't about money. It was about drawing a line in ink so bold they couldn't ignore it. Step 2: pull back the curtain. I gathered receipts, bank statements, and proof of every contribution I had made to this family. Not for them, at least, not yet. But for me. To remind myself that their narrative, that I was selfish, useless, and unworthy, was a lie. Step 3: the reveal. That one, I hadn't decided yet. But I knew it was coming. A moment, a stage, a place where they could no longer deny the truth. 2 weeks later, the first test came. It was a Saturday afternoon when my phone buzzed. Lily. Hey Ratch, she said in her sing-song voice, the same one she always used when she wanted something. So, listen, my rent's due and I'm a little short. Could you spot me $1,200? Just until next month? In the past, I would have sighed, opened my banking app, and sent it before she finished her sentence. But this time, I smiled. I can't, Lily, I said evenly. There was a pause. What do you mean you can't? I mean I won't. I've helped you more times than I can count, and it's time you learn to handle your own responsibilities. Her tone turned sharp. Wow. Really? You're going to abandon me like that? No, Lily, I said calmly. I'm finally choosing myself. That's not abandonment. That's survival. She hung up on me. And for the first time, instead of guilt, I felt peace. The calls kept coming. Ethan texted me a week later, car trouble again. Can you wire me $3,000? I wrote back, no. Good luck. Claire called in tears about needing help with childcare while she started a new project. I told her kindly that I was busy with my own business and couldn't commit. Each no felt like a liberation. Each boundary, a small revolution. And then, the inevitable happened. My mother called. Rachel, she snapped as soon as I answered. What's this nonsense about you refusing to help your siblings? Ethan said you wouldn't send him money. Claire said you wouldn't watch the kids. Do you have any idea how selfish you sound? I swallowed, steadying my voice. I'm not selfish, Mom. I'm just done being used. Her laugh was bitter, sharp. Used? Don't be ridiculous. Families help each other. You wouldn't even have a career if it weren't for us. After everything we've done for you. That old guilt rose up like bile, but I pushed it down. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Silence. You've never shown up for me. Not once. But I showed up for all of you. I've been paying, supporting, giving, while you called me worthless. That ends now. You don't get my money. You don't get my time. Not until you can treat me with the respect I deserve. Her voice dropped into that cold, cutting tone I knew too well. You'll regret this, Rachel. When you're alone, when no one's there for you, you'll regret it. But this time, her words didn't pierce me. They bounced off. Maybe, I said softly. But I'd rather be alone with self-respect than surrounded by family who hates me. And then I hung up. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. Not from fear. From adrenaline. From victory. Because for the first time in my life, I had chosen me. But I knew my family. They wouldn't let this go. They would push back. They would test me. They would try to paint me as the villain. Which was fine. Because I was ready for the next step. The reveal. And trust me, when it came, it would shatter everything they thought they knew about me. My name is Daniel Carter, and I never thought truth could feel like both a weapon and a wound. That night, after the confrontation at the restaurant, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Half the city seemed to have seen the video. My best friend Marcus had uploaded it, claiming he was only helping me expose the lies. But in his version, he painted himself as the loyal friend and me as the man too weak to defend his marriage. The narrative was twisted, ugly, and cruel. My chest felt like it was caving in every time I scrolled through the comments. I slammed my fist against the kitchen counter, the sound echoing through the empty apartment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to tear my own heart out, forever trusting the two people I had loved most. Everywhere I looked, I saw them. Angela's smile that used to calm me now replayed like a taunt, Marcus's voice once steady in my life now venom dripping from every syllable. I couldn't escape it. The betrayal had followed me into my own home, poisoning every breath. Then came the worst part. Angela herself showed up at my door. She didn't look ashamed. She didn't look scared. She looked angry, as if I was the one who had destroyed her world. Her eyes, once soft with love, burned with entitlement. Why couldn't you just let it go, Daniel? Why did you have to humiliate me like that in front of everyone? Her voice cracked with fury. My laugh came out sharp, bitter. Humiliate you? Angela, you humiliated our vows. You humiliated our marriage. You made me look like a fool every single time you ran to him behind my back. Don't you dare come here and play the victim. She stepped closer, her voice lower now, almost like a threat. You think you're going to win sympathy? You think people care? Daniel, you don't have power in this. Marcus does. He's connected. He has influence. If you keep this up, he'll ruin you. That was it. That was the moment my heartbreak hardened into steel. I stared at her, my fists clenched so tightly that blood almost drew from my palms. No, Angela. He doesn't have power over me. Not anymore. Because the truth always comes out, and when it does, neither of you will be able to run from it. The slam of the door behind her felt final, but inside I knew the war had only begun. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces laughing at me, mocking me. I replayed every memory, birthdays, anniversaries, family dinners, realizing now how many of them must have been tainted by their secret meetings, their hidden messages. The rage kept me awake, pacing like a caged animal. By morning, I wasn't just a man betrayed. I was a man with a plan. I started gathering evidence. Emails, messages, financial records, all the things they thought I'd never see. Marcus had been using me for years, I discovered. He'd siphoned money from the business, covered it up with false invoices, used Angela to manipulate me into overlooking the gaps. My stomach twisted, reading every line. Betrayal wasn't just personal. It was financial. It was calculated. They weren't just cheating on me. They were stealing from me. And that gave me ammunition more powerful than anger. It gave me the truth that could destroy them. But the deeper I dug, the more dangerous it felt. Marcus had friends in high places. He was cocky because he knew people owed him favors. I realized quickly that if I went straight to the authorities, he'd spin it, turn me into the desperate husband making false accusations. I needed a different stage, one where the truth couldn't be buried, one where the world would see them for who they were. That stage came sooner than I expected. A charity gala, Marcus's big night. He had been invited to speak, to showcase his generosity and leadership. Angela was set to be on his arm, playing the perfect partner in crime. And me? I was supposed to be invisible. Forgotten. Humiliated into silence. But I wasn't going to stay silent. Not this time. The night of the gala, I stood outside the glowing venue, the city lights bouncing off the glass walls. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from purpose. I wasn't here for revenge alone. I was here to reclaim my dignity, to show everyone the truth they had tried to bury. I walked in, head held high, every eye turning toward me. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some people pitied me. Others smirked, expecting another public breakdown. But I didn't flinch. I didn't falter. When Marcus finally took the stage, his voice boomed with confidence. He spoke about loyalty, about honor, about giving back to the community. It was almost laughable, the hypocrisy of every word he spoke. And standing next to him, Angela smiled, her hand looped in his, as if nothing could touch them. I clenched my jaw. Then the moment came. The microphone was passed for remarks from honored guests. Everyone assumed I would stay quiet. But I didn't. I stepped forward, my hands steady, my voice loud enough to silence the room. My name is Daniel Carter. And for years, I stood by Marcus as a friend. For years, I trusted Angela as my wife. But tonight, I'm not here to celebrate their lies. I'm here to tell the truth. Gasps rippled through the audience. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, trying to laugh it off, but I didn't stop. This man, the one you praise as a leader, has been stealing from his own company. He has betrayed not only me, but every single person who put their faith in him. And this woman," I gestured toward Angela, her face paling, stood by his side, helping him hide it, all while destroying her own marriage. The silence that followed was deafening. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. The truth was no longer confined to whispers or private pain. It was out there, alive, undeniable. Marcus lunged toward me, his hand gripping my arm. His voice hissed through clenched teeth. "You're finished, Daniel. Do you hear me? Finished." I wrenched free, staring him down. "No, Marcus. You are. Because lies might shine for a while, but the truth burns forever." Security rushed in as chaos broke out, but I didn't resist. I had done what I came to do. As I walked out of that gala, the air felt lighter, even though the war was far from over. I knew the days ahead would be brutal: lawyers, accusations, the media circus. But for the first time in months, I felt something stronger than pain. I felt free. The night I walked out of that gala, I thought the hardest part was over. But truth has a way of cutting deeper before it heals. In the days that followed, the video of my speech spread everywhere. News outlets picked it up. Social media lit up with debates. Half the city seemed divided, some calling me brave, others claiming I was bitter and jealous. But none of that mattered, because behind the noise, the truth was doing its work. Investigators moved in quickly once the evidence surfaced. Marcus's clean image shattered almost overnight. The man who once walked into rooms with applause now walked into courtrooms with handcuffs. Watching him drag through hearings, his arrogance stripped away, was a strange kind of justice. But it wasn't sweet. It wasn't satisfying. It was hollow. Because no matter how many times I saw his face fall, it didn't erase the years I lost, the trust I'd buried, the love that turned out to be a lie. Angela didn't fare much better. When Marcus's empire crumbled, she was left clinging to scraps. The same people who used to fawn over her at events now avoided her like a plague. I heard she tried reaching out to friends, family, anyone who would listen, but the doors kept slamming in her face. She showed up at my place one last time, broken, her eyes red from crying. "Daniel. I made a mistake. I thought he was everything, but he's ruined me. Please, can't we just start over?" Her voice trembled with desperation, but all I could feel was the weight of every betrayal, every lie, every tear I had shed because of her choices. I looked at her, my chest heavy but my voice steady. "Angela, we can't start over. Because you didn't just ruin us, you ruined yourself. I loved you. I trusted you. And you threw it all away for someone who never deserved it. Now you have to live with that choice." I closed the door, and for the first time, I didn't look back. The months that followed were a strange kind of rebirth. People expected me to crumble, to drown in bitterness. But I didn't. I poured myself into rebuilding not just my career, but my soul. I worked harder, restructured my company, cut out the poison that had nearly destroyed me. And slowly, life started to feel different. Not easy, not painless, but honest. And honesty, I learned, was worth more than anything else. But it wasn't just about me. There was a bigger lesson burning in every corner of my story, one I wanted others to hear. One evening, I was invited to speak at a community event. I stood there, looking at the faces of strangers waiting to hear what I had to say. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing, but my voice came out strong. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones we let closest to our hearts. And when it happens, it feels like it will destroy you. But here's the truth: betrayal is not the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of learning who you are without the lies. The beginning of finding strength you didn't know you had. And the beginning of understanding that no one, no matter how much you love them, deserves the power to break you completely. The room was silent, every eye fixed on me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the man who had been humiliated, betrayed, or pitted. I felt like someone who had survived, and more than that, someone who could help others survive too. As I left that night, a thought stayed with me. Marcus and Angela had taken so much from me, but they had also given me something I never expected: clarity, strength, a deeper understanding of love, loyalty, and truth. They had burned my old life to the ground, but from those ashes, I had built something stronger. And maybe that's what life is about. Not holding on to what was destroyed, but learning how to grow from it. Because in the end, betrayal is a fire. It can consume you, or it can forge you into something unbreakable. And me? I chose to be unbreakable. Fire.